Welcome back. Today, at the request of one of my students, I wanted to talk about the power of one thing. So let's get into it. I once saw a very cool thing. I saw a monk take a whole stack of post-it notes and he wrote on every single post-it note, do one thing at a time. And then he posted it on his wall where he worked. And it was just a constant reminder. And the practice of putting all of those up was this huge task of doing just one thing at a time. And that's a really wonderful way, isn't it, to hone in this power of one-pointed concentration. Doing just one thing. When I wash the dish, I only wash the dish. When I walk, I only walk. That power of doing just one thing. It's a focusing of our mind. And where we go wrong with this is we often put the cart before the horse, right? So we got to figure out what is leading what. And when it comes to yoga, we are very specifically led down a very direct path to this kind of one-pointed concentration. And that pathway is by putting the body into a low idle state. So when we establish heart rate variability, resonant breathing, we lower the heart rate and we're also lowering the breath rate. And that puts the whole body into a low idle state, especially if we get into the freeze response. We're really lowering the idle. And so suddenly everything, the noise of life, that's usually in our body is slowing down. And so, of course, it's easier to hold your mind to one thing. And this is an essential skill, an essential power of meditation, is the ability to place your mind and hold it there on just one thing. But it is not a stressful, I will grab my mind and push it there. There's might be some of that in the beginning. But really, it's the low idle state, the lowering of the heart rate, getting into heart rate variability, lowering the breath rate in order to get into the heart rate variability resonance. All of that puts the body into the low idle state, and it just clears your mind. Clears it right out, and suddenly, oh my God, I can actually think straight. I can actually focus on one thing. And that's a magnificent power. It's very, very necessary. Now, I talk a lot about going into trance and, letting go and going into spaciousness. So how does this all connect? And I thought that I would draw a series of symbols to really try and map this out. So in the beginning, if your mind was a box, it's as if your mental state is really fractured. You're just kind of shooting off in every direction. In the beginning, we're just like that joke about the dog that sees a squirrel. It's like, I'm listening. Oh, squirrel. That's what our mind is like all the time. So it's kind of fractured. And then we very slowly begin to put ourselves into a low idle state. And this kind of concentration comes along where we can actually hold to one thing. In heart rate variability resonance, we are holding to the breath. Very simply, we're holding to a specific breath rate, and that is the point, that is the focus of the concentration. You can also concentrate on the 4 proofs. That's a wonderful form of concentration. And so if we switch back and forth between these two, we're going to have really wonderful results. Now we're beginning to get clarity. We're beginning to get focus, but the fracturing is still there. But that one-pointedness opens up inside of us, and now comes in this secondary focus. And so you might say that our focus has widened out a little bit. So we still have the concentration on one thing, and yet we are opening up to the sides a little bit. It's like that one focus is clearing out everything else. And eventually, that focus takes up your entire mind. It becomes just one thing. And when you actually do this, when you actually fill your mind to capacity with just one thing, you have achieved absorption. And so, what this looks like in deep meditation is your mind may begin to fill with spaciousness, or your mind may begin to fill completely with nothingness, or your mind may begin to fill completely with the secondary presence, the presence of the higher self that you sense inside of you. And if you can fill your mind absolutely and completely, then you will eventually enter into absorption and then samadhi. So that's how that process works. So it's very essential, but it's not you cannot put the cart before the horse. You have to put the horse first. The breath and the low idle state is what creates the clarity. It's not that you force the clarity. It's almost impossible. So you have to put the breath and the low idle state first. And you have to understand that that one-pointed focus is going to soften just a little bit at the front, and it's going to start to spread out. And you can actually induce this. And that's why I say to hold on to spaciousness, to expand. So we begin like this and we end up like this. And this is why Hakalau is one of the most perfect meditations on earth that I've ever seen. It's such a perfect explanation of the process, of the entire process. It's in a nutshell, this tiny little thing which gives you so many secrets and understandings if you really dive into it. And so where's this in the yogi lore? Well, it's in Shambhavi Mudra. That's what they're talking about. That process that I represent with Hakalau is in the Shambhavi Mudra. So that's what I'm really teaching you. I'm really teaching you an extremely deep study of Shambhavi Mudra. And so how do you do this wonderful Hakalau, Forrest? You better tell us, right? So you put your mind on one thing. So you look ahead and you find one point to concentrate on. And as you look at that one point, you open up your peripheral vision and make sure that you can see everything on the left and everything on the right. And you just kind of take everything into you, into your awareness as you look straight ahead. All right? That is Hakalau. And it will cause your eyes to dilate. And that's a neurological driver for what? The right brain. That's right. So we start off with the left brain and we go into the right brain. It's really amazing. That's the transition from the left to the right. We're going from concentration, one-pointed, which is enabled by what? The low idle state, which then grows and grows into an expansive state in the right brain, in the right hippocampus of the brain, which is spatial. So that one point opens up and it becomes all points, you see? And that's the transition. That's the real miracle of one thing, just one thing, enabled by the low idle state and consuming you. One of my samadhis, I was at a retreat and I found this little book of Rama. And I was just so enchanted by the story. There wasn't much to do. There's no distractions. I was fasting. And I just became enamored with the story. And it just kind of started flowing through me. Rama, 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 Rama. And then I went to meditate and I was thinking of Rama and I was thinking of the story. And it just consumed my whole mind. And so I entered into an absorption state. And I had a Rama Samadhi on that retreat. And it was like nothing. It was like no meditation I'd ever had. It was so amazing. That's what happens when one point becomes all points, and it consumes us. It consumes our mind, our emotions, our intelligence, everything consumes us whole. And that's how we enter into these very, very deep states. So Hakalau is really just a beautiful study of this, because you're looking at one point and you hold that one point, and yet you begin to hold everything. Everything on the left, everything on the right, everything. Look at everything, take it all in. It seems so simple. It's it's okay. It's just so simple. Go out in nature and do it. In the fresh air. Do it every day. Do it over and over. It's such a deep study of this process. I absolutely adore it. I hope that you loved this. If you did, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you.